Hello, and welcome back to RPGun, where I finally have the fully completed project. So I'll be going through all of the levels and showing off the game in its entirety and giving a brief explanation on how it meets each assignment objective. So I'm actually going to start by entering into the built game, and I get started into the main menu where I'm just going to hit play. From here, I get a little explanation that the player of this RPG has chosen the Archer class, so we need to platform over and get our starter bow. You can notice on the screen that I have a health bar with 100 health and 2 item trackers telling me how many keys and apples I have, which is currently 0. So I'll pick up these apples and continue over and grab this key, which I can use to open up this door. Then for a few more jumps, including this one, which has a moving platform, I finally reach my weapon. But that isn't a bow. So now the player has a straight up gun, and they can use that to hit these targets. And it looks like our path is blocked by another door, and I don't see any way through, so we'll need to look for another key. I'll stand up here and shoot at these targets. And it looks like that final one has revealed the key to move forward. Just get rid of that door and all these boxes in my way. And by stepping through this archway here, I will reach the village. I'm now in a classic RPG village where I will get my quest from this fellow here, who is letting me know that a witch is the reason that everything is floating up like this. And also all of the goblin hordes are attacking, as if that wasn't bad enough. And I can learn from these two here that the apples are good for healing, so I can go around and collect all of the apples islands and just generally use this to stock up for the quest ahead, do a bit more target practice, and be rewarded with yet another apple. See this fellow and how he's sad after losing his favorite bush to the spell with a witch's spell. And finally go up here and retrieve the key behind the old tower like the quest giver told us. So now I can continue on east into the forest level. And you'll notice as I go in there that my keys and apples persist through levels. So when I encounter a door in there, I'll be able to use that key that I just got to unlock it and use all my apples to. Go. Here's that door. And now with that open, I'll be able to start blasting my way through these goblins. And it looks like I have a choice to go up towards the mountain path or down towards the mine path. I think I'll be going up towards the mountain path. I'll take note of the 2 different types of goblins that are all coming towards me. There's the blue ones, which are simply charging towards me, and then these green ones, which are shooting at me. And their arrows do a considerable amount of damage, so I want to heal up using my apples. I can also check behind this watchtower here for the archers and steal their stash of apples to get more health. Now I'll go along these floating stones to get up to the mountain path. I'll be able to fall off and die is what I'll be able to do. Yes. We're able to climb up those to get up to the mountain path. But I'm not the best at this game, so I'll just go down towards the much easier mine path. And this level revolves around following a track, sort of like a mine cart, and shooting all of these guys as they come along at you. After finally reaching the end here, now I will have reached the boss battle against Glib One Eye. Looks like his name is being cut off a little by my health bar, but see, this boss battle contains a line of goblin charges coming at me. Several watchtowers dotted around with more archers. These moving platforms, which are trying to block my bullets. These gateways, which are spawning more goblin chargers. These targets, which I can use to collect more apples to heal. And of course, the man himself, Glib One Eye, who can only be damaged by hitting his eye. And he was much tankier than all of the other goblins and actually takes multiple hits to take down. And you can see now that he has died, the spawners have stopped working. And I'm free to continue forward, where I will finally reach the witch who is behind all of this. And I've won. So now that I've beat the game, I will go into the level select here and head into the mountain to show off that level as well. This level revolves around a lot of archers and high up vantage points trying to shoot you down. So I'll just grab a sneaky apple behind this crate. And also these jittering platforms can be used as jump pads to get to higher ground. Get past those boxes in my path. With a couple of goblin chargers. And make it up here further. No. And across these final pillars, where I can reach the end and knock these boxes off this final jump pad, which will raise me up, and can head upwards into the sideways gate and collect apples along the way, which once again brings me into the boss battle. I don't feel like doing this again, so I will actually hit E to pause. Well, pause is a stretch, but I can continue from here, reset the level, or go back to the main menu, which I will do, and quit out. Now that you've seen everything the game has to offer, let's hop back into the Unreal editor and look at how everything functions. Firstly, to show the principle of encapsulation, I'll open up the blueprint for the goblin spawner, which contains all of the information that it needs. It has its timer to tell it when to spawn the goblins, its event to actually spawn the goblins, and it checks itself if the Cyclops has been killed. So everything that it needs is contained within itself. And then for the principle of inheritance, do the player health blueprint, which inherits from the health blueprint. They have the same take damage, heal, and die properties, but the player health is slightly different. It has more when it begins play, even if a different overridden event when it dies, and a wholly new function in the update UI. But it's inheriting most of its properties from the health function. In fact, many of the blueprints in here inherit from base classes like status mex actor or user widget. And for the principle of polymorphism, which isn't used much in this project, but you can see in the boss battle here that the two different health bars, the one for the player and the one for the boss, they're both health bars. They're both using many of the same names and definitions and even the same scripts, but their actual functions are different, as one's tracking the player health and one's tracking the bosses. And for the final principle of abstraction, take note of which functions are and are not shown within the editor here. Like within the health, max health, and canobrial properties of an object are shown on top of it. But for something like the Cyclops UI widget reference and spawner reference, those don't need to be shown, so those are both hidden. All of these basic principles form the fundamentals of object-oriented programming, encapsulation being about the elements that an object needs and the actions that it performs, all being found within that object. Inheritance being about objects taking properties from other objects and being based on them. Polymorphism being about objects with the same names or definitions containing different properties. And abstraction, which is about what elements and variables are private and hidden within the code, and what's public and available in the editor. Now, for variables, which are containers that store data, I have many types within these blueprints. I use floats for health and booleans, as well as vectors for locations and rotation values for rotation amounts, even strings that convert into names for the next level blueprint, and several object references all around. It is important for these to not be hard-coded, as how they change can affect gameplay. Things like how much damage the arrow deals is fine to be hard-coded as 25, since that will always be the same. But for something like if the mouse cursor is showing that needs to be a Boolean because that can change during gameplay. That is a variable property. And I use vector math in both the Goblin Charger. That's not the Charger. In the Goblin Charger to always move towards the player, and the arrow to move towards its target, which is where the player was when it was spawned. I also use vector math on all of the goblins to make them face towards the player. So this basically works through taking the location, the target that it wants to reach, and the location that it is at, finding the difference between the two. And the rest of this is turning that into increments between the two locations, and then moving it in those slower increments so that it's not instantly teleporting to it and is instead going at a normalized rate. These also show frame rate independent values through delta time and delta seconds. Because it moves at a constant rate in the game, no matter your computer's performance. So no matter how good, how slow your computer is, these delta seconds ensure that it's going at a constant rate. Something that doesn't do that is these moving platforms, like these here, which use a duration. So they have a set time to travel between locations, and that could very much change based on the player's frame rate. Now, the levels are being loaded mainly through the next level blueprint here that just detects when the player walks into it and loads whatever level is entered as its variable. Like for this one here, its variable is entered as level 7, so that's the level that it loads. And the witch and wind zone blueprints also both have the ability to take the player to the windscreen. Now, the game instance is being put to good use here. It is containing the player's inventory and resetting the levels. Since it is a singleton, which means that only one can exist, it is good for performing these game-wide tasks that need persistent data through levels. So even if the player's health, location, and other elements reset as new levels are open, the game instance ensures that the key and apple amounts are stored fine and never change. And that no matter what level the player is in, when they die, they will reset to that same level instead of a set one. I make use of hit and overlap events for all of the shootable things, like the goblins and the targets and even the doors. They all detect when they're being shot and destroy themselves when they're hit or when their trigger is overlapping with the bullet. Now, player inputs are used for a few different things. The player can hit the left mouse button to shoot their gun. They can also use H to heal, provided that they have an apple. And purely to fulfill the requirements here, I included an is input key down in the form of Q. So if you hold down Q, you just keep spraying your gun. So as long as Q is held down and it keeps detecting that, it will keep firing. Yep. And there's also the key press events for E, which just opens up the little the pause menu. Now, actors are spawned by the Archer Goblin, which spawns arrows, and the Goblin Spawner that spawns Charger Goblins. Both these are at set intervals, and all of the goblins can be destroyed when they get shot. So can the targets, the doors, and the witch. Now, I make use of functions throughout the blueprints, including these functions in the goblin spawner. So it has the function to spawn a goblin, and also the function for when the Cyclops dies to turn itself off. The shooting function for the goblin archer. The destroying self function for the arrow. So functions used throughout. And there's also on the Apple blueprint and the key blueprints, custom events for when they're picked up. Same for the door, saying that the key has been used. All of these feed into the game instance as custom events, changing the amount of apples and keys. The arrows also have a custom event for when they are spawned, which also feeds them the information of their target. Functions and custom events are important for object-oriented programming, and they allow for the complex code to be broken up into smaller, more manageable pieces. This is also helped by all of the comments that I've used to label the different sections of code and break them apart. Now, in here, all of these widgets are used for UI, including the player and Cyclops health bars, the player's inventory, and the main menu, pause menu, and windscreen menu are all menu elements that give the player clear and distinct UI to know what's going on in the game world. So there you have it. The complete RPGun game and all of its inner workings as they meet the project requirements. Thanks for watching.